You know, if someone told me 20 years ago that I'd be living alone in my 70s, no family nearby, no friends left in town, and no one to check in on me, I probably would have laughed it off. But here I am. And truth be told, it's not all bad. It's not easy either, but it's a different kind of life. One that's quieter, deeper, and surprisingly full of lessons I never would have learned otherwise. So if you're in that same boat, maybe you live alone, don't have much of a social circle anymore, or feel like you've aged out of the world, pull up a chair. Let's talk about the lessons I've learned from living alone in old age with no friends, no family, and no safety net, but somehow still finding peace. They're not sad lessons. They're real ones. Some of them will make you laugh, some might hit a little deep, but all of them will remind you that being alone doesn't mean your story is over. It just means it's your turn to write it your way. So grab a cup of coffee, pull up a chair, and let's talk about what really happens when the only person you can count on is you. Number 1. You stop waiting for someone to save you and start saving yourself. There's this funny and slightly painful moment in everyone's solo chapter when you realize no one's coming. Nobody's walking through that door to cook dinner, to ask if you've taken your pills, or to remind you it's trash day. At first, that realization can hit you like a cold wind. You sit there thinking, so this is it? It's all on me now? And it's a little terrifying. But then, after the shock fades, something else happens. You start stepping up. You become your own safety net. For me, it started small. I stopped skipping breakfast because, well, no one was around to make sure I didn't. I began keeping a notebook by the kitchen counter, jotting down everything from grocery lists to doctor appointments. It wasn't fancy, but it was my way of saying, I've got me. I know a guy named Walter who said he created a mini rescue plan for himself. Every morning, he checks off 3 things that keep him grounded: move, eat, connect. He said it's not about surviving, it's about proving to himself that he can. You start to take pride in it. Fixing your own leaky faucet feels like climbing Mount Everest. Cooking a decent meal for one becomes an act of self-respect. It's not that you stop needing others, it's that you stop depending on them for your stability. And let me tell you something. The day you stop waiting for a knock on the door that never comes is the day you start hearing your own strength knocking from the inside. 2. Silence isn't the enemy, it's the mirror. When you first start living alone, the silence is brutal. It's like the house itself is watching you. Every creak, every hum of the fridge feels louder than it should. You turn on the TV for background noise, or the radio, or even the fan, anything to fill that emptiness. But after a while, when the panic of silence fades, something beautiful happens. The quiet starts talking back, not with words, but with space. You start hearing yourself think again. I remember sitting one evening with a cup of tea, no TV, no music, just me and the ticking clock. And I realized I'd been running from my own thoughts for years. The noise of life, work, kids, responsibilities. It had always drowned out the quiet voice inside. But now that voice finally had room to speak. And it said things I needed to hear. Like, you're not as broken as you thought. Or, it's okay to miss people who aren't coming back. One widowed woman named Dorothy said she used to fill her house with sound just to avoid remembering her husband. But then she started treating silence like a conversation instead of a threat. She'd make her tea, sit in her favorite chair, and just listen to the birds, the rain, or the hum of life itself. She said it became her daily meeting with peace. That's what silence becomes after a while, a mirror. It reflects everything you've been avoiding, yes, but also everything you are. It's honest. Sometimes painfully so. But once you learn to sit in it without fear, it turns into something comforting. You start to realize silence isn't loneliness. It's presence. It's being here, fully, completely, quietly alive. 3. Routine becomes your lifeline. Let me tell you something. When you live alone, especially in your later years, time starts to melt. Mornings blend into afternoons, days into weeks, and before you know it, you can't remember what day it is, or when you last left the house. That's why routine is everything. It's not about being rigid. It's about giving your days a heartbeat. I wake up around the same time every day, even on weekends. Not because I'm trying to be disciplined, but because it gives me a sense of rhythm. I open the curtains, say good morning to the world and to my stubborn knees, and start the coffee. That small act of routine sets the tone for the rest of my day. One guy named Ken said he built what he calls his lonely man's schedule. Every day at 10 a.m. he takes a walk around the block, rain or shine. He says the walk isn't about exercise, it's about giving himself a reason to get dressed, to move, to exist in the world. I've learned that without routine, life alone can start to feel like floating, aimless, blurry, disconnected. But when you create structure, you give your mind and body something solid to hold on to. For me, writing things down made all the difference. I actually started using a digital daily planner made specifically for seniors, and it gave my days rhythm again. It's simple, keeps me on track, and reminds me to do the little things that make me feel alive, not just busy. If you want to check it out, the link's in the pinned comment. Your routine doesn't have to be fancy. Heck, sometimes mine is just making sure I shave on Mondays, clean the kitchen on Tuesdays, and water the plants on Thursdays. But it keeps me grounded. It's my quiet agreement with life that I'm still showing up. There's also comfort in predictability. You start to look forward to the little things. Your morning coffee, your afternoon walk, your evening show. Those small rituals become anchors, the kind that keep your spirit from drifting too far. And if I'm being honest, sometimes I'll break the routine just for fun, have breakfast for dinner, stay up late watching an old western, or call it a lazy day and refuse to feel guilty. Because when you live alone, balance matters. You build your routine, but you also learn to give yourself permission to just be. 4. You realize how little you actually need. Here's the funny thing about living alone. You start noticing how much stuff you've been carrying around that never actually mattered. At first, I kept everything. Every souvenir, every tool, every just-in-case cable that I couldn't identify but felt too guilty to throw out. But as the years went by, I started asking myself, why am I keeping all this? Who am I saving it for? That question hit me hard. So one weekend, I decided to declutter. Not in a trendy minimalist kind of way, but more like, let's see how many coffee mugs one man really needs. Turns out the answer was 2. One for me, one for when I forget to wash the first. And the more I let go of, the lighter I felt. There's something freeing about looking around your space and realizing everything you see has a purpose, or a memory that still makes you smile. Everything else? Gone. One retired teacher said she sold half her belongings and described the feeling as losing 40 pounds of invisible stress. She said her home felt like it could finally breathe again. I knew exactly what she meant. You stop trying to fill space with things and start filling it with peace. You realize you don't need a big house to feel secure. You need a space that feels like you. You don't need expensive dinners. A home-cooked meal with a little music in the background does the trick. I've actually been working my way through a list of 50 easy, senior-friendly soup recipes, and let me tell you, nothing feels more comforting than a pot simmering on the stove when the world goes quiet. If you want to check it out, the link is in the pinned comment. In a world that keeps screaming more, living alone teaches you the quiet power of enough. And let me tell you, enough feels pretty darn good. 5. Technology becomes your new sidekick. Now, I'll admit, I was one of those folks who used to grumble about all these gadgets and say things like, back in my day, we didn't need an app to boil water. But then one day, my niece gave me a smart speaker. I rolled my eyes, until I realized I could just say, Alexa, play Willie Nelson. and the music filled my living room like an old friend walking through the door. From that moment on, I was hooked. Technology stopped being the enemy. It became my sidekick. A silent helper that made the small, quiet parts of living alone feel a little easier. I've got reminders for my meds, grocery lists on my phone, and even a motion-sensing light that turns on when I shuffle to the kitchen at 3 a.m., which, for the record, is 50% for safety and 50% for midnight snacks. One gentleman said his tablet saved his sanity. He watches travel vlogs, plays chess with strangers across the world, and video calls his old army buddies once a week. He said it's not the same as being together, but it's something. And sometimes, something is enough. I've even found that voice assistants can be surprisingly comforting. Sure, they're not human, but there's something nice about saying good morning and hearing a cheerful response back, even if it's from a box. And let's be honest, technology can make you feel more independent. I can order groceries with a click, track my blood pressure, and even read news headlines without straining my eyes. These little conveniences give back a sense of control, which is priceless when you're older and living solo. So yeah, I used to curse technology. Now, I thank it. It keeps me connected, informed, and occasionally entertained when I fall down a YouTube rabbit hole watching people fix old tractors. Don't judge. It's relaxing. 6. You learn to redefine connection. This is the big one. When you're older and living alone, you eventually have to face the hard truth. Your definition of connection has to evolve, or you'll drown in the old one. I used to think connection meant people in the same room. Loud laughter, shared meals, real handshakes. And don't get me wrong, those things are irreplaceable. But when they're gone, you can't spend your days mourning what used to be. You've got to learn how to build something new with what's left. For me, that started with small things. A wave to my neighbor when I took out the trash, a quick chat with the pharmacist, a kind word to the grocery clerk. Those small moments of recognition reminded me that I'm still part of the world. Then I found connection in places I never expected. I started commenting on videos about gardening, sharing a few jokes, offering advice to younger folks who reminded me of my younger self. And you'd be surprised. People respond. They remember your name. They ask for updates on your plants. It's not friendship in the traditional sense, but it's real. There's a woman named Jean who said she doesn't have any local friends, but she's part of 3 online communities. One for cooking, one for crossword lovers, and one for folks who live alone. She said those online strangers have become her coffee table companions. They share recipes, birthdays, and little life victories. It's not flashy, but it's real human warmth through a screen. Connection doesn't always have to come in hugs or visits. Sometimes it comes in shared words, kind comments, or even the presence of something living, like feeding birds on your porch or tending to a pet. You start to realize connection is about energy, not proximity. It's about being open enough to give and receive, even when no one's physically there. And maybe that's the biggest shift of all. You stop craving constant company and start cherishing meaningful moments, even if they're fleeting. A genuine smile, a shared laugh online, or just that feeling that somewhere, someone else out there is walking this same road. 7. You discover the healing power of nature. When I first started living alone, I thought I needed people to feel alive. Turns out I just needed to step outside. There's something deeply grounding about nature, something that reminds you you're still part of the rhythm of life, even when the world feels like it's passed you by. You walk outside and see a tree that's been standing in the same spot for 50 years, and it doesn't seem to be in any hurry. It bends, it sways, it weathers storms, but it never quits. There's a lesson in that. I started small. Just sitting on my porch in the mornings with my coffee, listening to the birds gossip in the trees. After a while, I realized I started looking forward to it. That quiet moment became my reset button. No screens, no noise. Just me and the sky. One lady I met, I think her name was Margaret, said she started gardening after her husband passed away. At first, she did it to keep busy, but soon she found herself talking to her plants. She said they never talked back, but somehow they listened better than most people ever had. She said tending to them helped her remember she could still nurture something, that life could still respond to her care. And that's the thing about nature. It gives back what you give it. You water your plants, and they bloom. You show up to watch a sunset, and it shows up for you. Even something as simple as walking barefoot in the grass or watching rain slide down a window can calm your mind in ways no medication can. Some people pray in churches. These days, I pray in my backyard. It's quiet, it smells like earth, and I always feel better afterward. 8. You stop pretending and start living honestly. When you live alone, the performance ends. You stop playing roles. No one to impress, no one to please, no one to judge. It's just you. And let me tell you, that kind of honesty is liberating. You stop pretending you like things you don't. You eat dinner in your pajamas at 4 p.m. because, well, who's going to stop you? You play your old records too loud. You talk to yourself out loud and don't even try to hide it anymore. There's something funny about realizing you don't have to keep up appearances. I remember one evening, I cooked a fancy meal. Steak, mashed potatoes, the works. Then, halfway through eating, I thought, why am I using the good china? For me? And then I laughed and thought, exactly. For me. That's when it clicked. You don't need company to live well. You just need permission, your own. One fellow said the best part of living alone was not having to explain why he keeps a jar of peanut butter next to the bed. I laughed so hard at that. But I got it. That's the beauty of solitude. The freedom to be unapologetically weird, authentic, and real. And when you live like that long enough, something shifts. You start to like yourself again. You realize you're enough. Not because anyone says so, but because you finally stopped pretending you're someone else. 9. You find strength you didn't know you had. This one sneaks up on you. You don't realize how strong you've become until something goes wrong. And you handle it. I'll never forget the night I slipped in the kitchen. My leg cramped up. I couldn't stand, and for a few minutes, panic started to creep in. But then instinct kicked in. I crawled, reached the counter, pulled myself up, took a breath, and I was fine. Sore, sure, but fine. And afterward, I sat down, laughed a little, and thought, well, that could have gone worse. That's when it hit me. I didn't fall apart. I adapted. I coped. I got through it. That's what living alone teaches you. You stop assuming you're fragile. You start trusting your own resilience. You handle sickness, loneliness, even fear with a steadiness that surprises you. There's a man named Ralph I read about who said, living alone taught me I'm not as helpless as I thought. I'm just out of practice. I loved that because it's true. Strength doesn't come from having people around. It comes from realizing you can still figure things out, even when it's just you. And the best part? That strength doesn't make you hard. It makes you quietly sure. You stop doubting yourself over every little thing. You start saying, I've been through worse, I'll be fine. And most days, you really are. 10. You learn that peace is something you build, not something you find. This one. This took me the longest to learn. See, when I first started living alone, I thought peace was something that would just show up one day. Like a guest knocking at the door. I kept waiting for it. I thought if I rearranged my life enough, if I found the right hobby, or if I just stayed busy, peace would eventually find me. But it doesn't work that way. Peace isn't something that finds you. It's something you make. You build it slowly, through little choices every day. You build it by forgiving yourself for old mistakes. You build it by keeping your space tidy, because chaos outside creates chaos inside. You build it by setting boundaries, like turning off the news when it starts to drain you, or walking away from thoughts that only bring pain. I've learned that peace isn't this big, mystical feeling. It's more like a soft, steady hum in the background when you start treating yourself kindly. It's waking up and realizing you don't have to rush. It's cooking your own meal and actually enjoying it. It's saying, "I'm okay," and meaning it, even if no one's around to hear it. A woman once said, "Peace didn't come to me. I earned it by showing up for myself every day." That stuck with me, because that's exactly it. You don't stumble into peace. You build it, one quiet, intentional act at a time. And sure, some days are rough. The silence feels too loud, the house feels too empty, and your mind plays tricks on you. But then there are days, beautiful, calm days, when the light hits your window just right, your coffee tastes perfect, and you realize you made it. You built this life. You built this peace. And that, my friend, is something no one can take from you. So, there you have it. Living alone in your later years isn't the lonely tragedy people make it out to be. Sure, it gets quiet, sometimes a little too quiet, but in that silence you find clarity. You start hearing your own thoughts again. You realize you're stronger, more capable, and more alive than you ever gave yourself credit for. I used to think peace was something I'd stumble upon one day, like finding loose change in the couch cushions. But peace doesn't just show up. You build it. One morning walk, one meal for one honest conversation with yourself at a time. And if you're out there feeling like no one sees you, just know this. You're not forgotten. You're still growing, still learning, still living. That's something to be proud of. If this hit home for you, go ahead and give the video a thumbs up. Not for me, but for you, for making it this far. Subscribe if you want more stories and lessons from real life after 60, because trust me, the best chapters aren't behind us. They're still being written, one quiet, beautiful day at a time.